Today on the Blockchain Report, Bitcoin's holding steady around 122K and the world's losing its mind in three very different ways. Open Door says you might soon be able to buy your next house with Bitcoin, which means your mortgage broker is about to start saying hodl. Morgan Stanley tells clients to keep crypto at 2 to 4%, or as Bitcoiners call it, training wheels. And Taylor Swift's new showgirl era is breaking records, proving you don't need decentralization when you already control the entire internet. All that and more right now. Let's go. Good morning, my orange-pilled pioneers, and welcome back to another episode of the Blockchain Report. I'm Hank Hudson, coming to you live from San Francisco, California. It is Wednesday, that day of the week that's not quite the weekend, but it's also not quite worth pretending you're productive. Now, before we swan dive into today's chaos of bullish hopium, bearish cope, and billionaires fighting each other in the comment section, go ahead and smash that like button, and don't forget to follow RoxomTV and yours truly at Hank at RoxomTV, because your friend Chad's Discord server is not financial advice, it's just an emotional support group with charts. All right, grab your caffeine, hide your seed phrase, and let's see who's pumping and who's dumping in this morning's market rundown. Let's go. All right, so this morning, Bitcoin hovering around that 122K mark. Remember, just a few days ago, we saw new all-time highs right around 126, but we've scaled back a little bit, but nothing to worry about. In the last 24 hours, we've seen us go all the way down to 121, but right now we're holding steady right at about 122. Let's take a look at some Bitcoin charts here really quick so we can dissect what is actually going on in today's market. So the first chart I want to bring up today is the Bitcoin ETF daily flows chart. Okay, and we're getting that up here on the screen for you in just a second. Here it is. All right, so on this chart, the green equals inflows, the red are the outflows, and the black is the current BTC price. You can see that there at the top. So first up, we have the inflows. Think of this as the pulse of institutional money. The green bars mean that cash is flowing into Bitcoin ETFs. The red bars mean people are heading for the exits. And lately, well, we're seeing green like it's St. Patrick's Day. Things are looking pretty good right now. On October 6th, Bitcoin ETFs saw their second largest inflow day in history. You can see it right there, over $1.19 billion worth. And you add that to last week's $3.2 billion total, you've got some serious capital moving into Bitcoin despite the chaos in the broader economy. Now, this kind of demand, especially when gold's making new all-time highs, suggests big money is rotating into hard assets, and Bitcoin's officially earned its spot on that list. Bottom line here, gang, is when the world looks shaky and investors are still plowing billions of dollars into BTC, that's bullish momentum with a capital B. All right, the next chart we're bringing up here is the short-term holder MBRV Z-score chart. Now, this chart measures short-term holder profit levels and whether the market is overheating. So right now, what are we looking at? It sounds a little complicated, but it's really just kind of a fancy way of asking, are the short-term investors getting greedy, or are they feeling a little scared right now? Now, when this line that we can see spikes way up, it means that short-term holders are deep in profit. That's when markets tend to cool off or correct. When it dives down, it means they're in pain. Classic bottom signals. Right now, the line is just above neutral, as you can see by a little yellow circle right there, meaning short-term traders are mildly in profit, but nowhere near the frothy levels we've seen at previous cycle tops. So what does this actually mean? Well, this is a move to 123K that we saw isn't exactly euphoric. It's actually pretty orderly. There's still a lot of gas left in the tank, and historically, Bitcoin has gone much higher before this indicator hits its danger zone. So while everyone on X is calling for the top, the on-chain data is basically saying, relax, fam, we're not done here yet. All right, our last chart we're bringing up here is chart 3. That's our net realized profit loss chart in USD, okay? So the green here equals profits being taken. The red equals losses being realized. So What are we looking at here? This is basically the blockchain's version of an earnings report, okay? Those green bars mean investors are locking in those profits. Red again means they're panic selling at a loss. Right now, the spikes, as you can see, are pretty green. Investors are taking profits after new all-time highs, which is totally normal. But here's the key. The profit taking is actually pretty calm right now. No frantic sell-offs, no euphoric blow-off top behavior. Just steady hands realizing gains while conviction stays high. Compare that to the last two cycle tops, and these levels are muted. That suggests that this isn't the end of the run. It's actually just a healthy little breather we're experiencing right now. So yeah, we've got some selling, but not a stampede. This looks like consolidation before the next big leg up and not the end of the party. So today's big takeaway is that, you know what, you're always going to get panic on X during corrections, right? But that's just background noise here. The real data shows capital is still flowing in, short-term holders are not overheating, and profit taking is staying pretty controlled. And if history rhymes, this looks less like the top and more like a pit stop. And for the bulls out there, that is exactly what you want to see. All right, we got a lot to talk about today, so let's head over to our bull run. Let's go. All right, it's time for this morning's bull run, and joining us today, we have one of our good friends of the program, Piotr Bedkowski from Zappo Bank. Piotr, holler if you hear me. It's always great to have you back on the show. We got Piotr today. There he is. Hey, you doing, Piotr? Great to see you.
Great to see you too, Hank. I hear you loud and clear today.
Oh, I'd love to hear it. We got a lot to talk about today, my friend. Really quick though, everything good on your end of things right now? It's been a minute.
Absolutely, and it's getting better by the day. So super excited. Those news that we can comment on today. It's amazing news.
A lot to be excited about today. New all-time highs and all the news we're about to chat about right now. So hang 10, Piotr. I'm going to bring you back in a second. Then we're going to chat about this first story. Because Walmart, the retailer that sells everything from tires to toddler toys to piñatas, is now adding Bitcoin to the list. According to CNBC, the world's largest retailer is integrating Bitcoin trading into its fintech app, OnePay. That's right. America's biggest store is about to become America's biggest crypto on-ramp. The rollout starts later this year, and users will be able to buy Bitcoin right inside the OnePay app and then convert it instantly to cash to spend at Walmart, because nothing says mass adoption like paying for socks with Satoshis. Now, OnePay isn't some random third-party wallet either. It's Walmart's own fintech baby, born all the way back in 2021. Their goal here: build the US version of WeChat, a super app that combines banking, payments, shopping, and now crypto. Or in other words, it's about to be easier to buy Bitcoin at Walmart than it is to return something without a receipt. Walmart has been quietly adding financial products for years now. We're talking high-yield savings, credit and debit cards, buy now, pay later loans, even wireless plans. And now they're sliding Bitcoin into the mix like it's aisle 7. All right, we're bringing Piotr back. Piotr, when you hear Walmart, the world's biggest retailer, adding Bitcoin trading, do you think mass adoption or mass confusion at the customer service counter? What do you got?
Yeah, I definitely embrace the news positively, and I'm super happy to hear that, because that's exactly bringing Bitcoin to the masses, is bringing Bitcoin to where the customer is, bringing Bitcoin to the retail. Because right now, you know, Walmart app is becoming like a Bitcoin's new on-ramp, right? 150 million or so Americans that are using Walmart every week. Now they are few taps away from holding Bitcoin. So that's like a pushes for the real distribution, and this is helping the adoption of overall Bitcoin. Because now the retail can just start using it right away, even if they weren't thinking about this before. And this obviously widens the whole and grows the whole ecosystem as well. So for me, it's amazing that they added it, because this allows also for like all those use cases like spending, sending, saving BTC. Now this will become available for their customers, and they are meeting their customers where they are. So already in the retail app that they have. So I think if they nail the UX and the compliance and make it really easy to use Bitcoin there, they will quietly onboard more users into Bitcoin than, than any other exchange ever has. So I think
Yeah.
that's sort of like a direction where the next wave of the adoption could be. So instead of thinking about creating yet another crypto app, we can just look at what the apps are already popular there and just plug Bitcoin to make those apps better, plug Bitcoin to those apps. So I think the next killer app, and this we'll see, it will be somehow plugging the Bitcoin into ChatGPT and this ecosystem. So they have
Yeah.
hundreds of millions of users already, and they are growing pretty fast. So that's where next killer use case for a Bitcoin will be.
Yeah, it certainly seems like a huge on ramp to more Bitcoin adoption as we enter the future. But like you said, it's one of those things we really need to see them nail the UX of it all. And that's something I think we kind of still are figuring out as a whole. And once we kind of get the user interface and experience to be a little bit easier and simplified for all the no coiners out there, we're going to see a lot of new people rush into the Bitcoin space. And Piotr, Zappo Bank is built on the idea of kind of bridging Bitcoin and traditional banking. So how do you view a company like Walmart trying to play in that same sandbox?
So yeah, definitely Walmart is Walmart app at Zappo Bank. We've been focusing on the let's say high end of the market. So we've been our members are predominantly high net worth individuals or Bitcoiners who have been in the ecosystem for a long time. They accumulated lots of Bitcoin already. They keep buying more Bitcoin. And so we are sort of catering to that part of the market. But Walmart obviously bringing fresh people into the ecosystem and extending the reach and bringing more people in is obviously helpful to see that as well. I think on the retail side, the Walmart app itself will help you actually shopping with Walmart, but also you'll be able to probably spend that Bitcoin that you have there. Whereas with Zappo Bank, I mean, we are this one app that sort of bridges the USD with Bitcoin. And with Zappo Bank, you can actually do everything that you could be doing on USD side in traditional banking, but on the Bitcoin side. So not only we are offering you, savings accounts, spending with debit cards, borrowing against your Bitcoin, but also investing in stocks and ETFs. We are offering all of these services so that you have one place to both keep US dollars and Bitcoin next to each other, because USD represents the money of the past, whereas the Bitcoin represents the money of the future. And want that bridge to have we want to have this one place that allows you to have both and benefit from both, from USD liquidity at the same time as Bitcoin, upside potential.
Yeah. And, it is exciting about the Walmart, especially because, Zappo caters to people that have oftentimes been in the space for some time. And now we're kind of reaching that inflection point in Bitcoin's journey where we need to start reaching out to this whole new audience of John Q. public that has dismissed it for a long time. And what a better way than to have them use it while going to Walmart, the biggest retailer in America, if not the world. So it seems like a really big step in the right direction. And I'm excited to see how that's going to play out. And Piotr, from your seat at the table, if you had to predict who's next in line to do something like this, Amazon, Target, Costco, who would it be and what would real mass adoption look like from a consumer behavior standpoint at this point in time?
Yes. So I think we thought about this for a very long time. We have had initial, internal discussions around what the browser moment, we call the browser moment for the Bitcoin would be. And I think we are nearing that moment. So I think I read few days ago about Samsung working with Coinbase to bring the Bitcoin and crypto wallets natively into the Android onto the Samsung phones. And that would be pretty huge because all of a sudden they will probably start rolling this out in the US first for, let's say, a few, like tens of millions of users. But eventually you can see how they can roll this out across the globe. And keep in mind that Samsung devices, they are used probably by billions of people around the world. And once you have that possibility where you can just open the Samsung device, in this case Samsung, you can open the device and you can see the Bitcoin wallet embedded natively there. That would be like a browser moment and like a key milestone for the adoption, because all of a sudden all of those people could start using it. It would really sit at their fingertips. And this is also something that
Yeah.
we've heard, like Michael Saylor was talking a lot about this, right? What would be like, for example, the update of the iPhone and Apple pushing the native wallet onto the iPhones. That's probably gonna happen as well at some point in time. Right now, we see some sprouts that this may happen or will soon happen on Android devices, and that will be absolutely huge because guess what? I mean, we're using those devices daily, and so are billions of people. So, all of a sudden, bringing this so close to the consumer, plugging Bitcoin into a device that he or she is using every single day, this is totally game
Yeah.
changing. Because you don't need to install
It
anything.
really
I mean,
is.
this is just you open your phone and it's there.
Yeah. I mean, and you're totally right, and it wouldn't be a big surprise to see Samsung, lead the way with the Android phones. It always seems like their tech is a little better than like what Apple has, at least initially, but Apple's user interface just kind of trumps everything. So once people are having these wallets on their phone, they're seeing it every day, even if they're not using it, I think it will validate Bitcoin to a lot of people that have been kind of keeping it at an arm's length for some time because they'll be seeing it every day, and all of a sudden they're going to be curious and they're going to want to get involved. So I really think the phone adoption and having those wallets natively on your phones is going to be the next really, really big catalyst for Bitcoin's adoption going forward. So I'm super excited to see how all that plays out. I actually read recently they're going to be coming out with digital passports on your phone too, so I don't have to lug that thing around in fear of losing it in Cambodia, which I may have done one time. So yeah, very exciting times for that, and I appreciate your insights on that, Piotr. And we got more to talk about, so hang 10, my buddy. We're going to be back with you in a second, because Open Door may soon enable home buying and selling with Bitcoin. On X, CEO Kaz Nejashin replied to a user asking for the option to buy on Open Door using Bitcoin or some other cryptos. Now, Nejashin said, "We will, just we need to prioritize it." The comment signals a potential future feature while confirming Open Door is considering a Bitcoin play. Open Door shares have been in the spotlight amid renewed meme stock interest and backing from certain investors. The stock has climbed over 1,300% since the start of July. Early results show promise with the new program. Twice as many customers reach final cash offers, and they receive them faster. The program is expanding to all Open Door markets, and the company's leads say this is a way for them to grow without taking on additional risk. Although this all comes as Open Door recently announced it was going to slash the company's workforce by 85%, which could affect some more than 1,000 of their employees. We're bringing Piotr back. Piotr, buying a house with Bitcoin used to be a meme. Now it's a business model. Is this the start of a genuine real estate revolution, or is this just another PR stunt? What do you think?
Yeah, so that's very much interesting because there were lots of joking around, you can't buy coffee with Bitcoin, it just doesn't scale, it takes so long, etc., etc. Whereas here, all of a sudden, we see all those use cases where people are buying or selling houses for Bitcoin. And actually, that's a very interesting idea because that validates the use case where and legitimizes the Bitcoin as a hard money. Because, well,
Right.
houses are one of those investments that, people are buying once in their lifetime or maybe twice. I mean, some people may buy multiple houses, but for most people, it's like one of the biggest investments they will ever made. And buying house with Bitcoin or then conversely selling house for Bitcoin is a big, big deal. I know we've been talking about this, like price of houses is going down in terms of Bitcoin, even though it's going up in terms of USD, it's going down in Bitcoin. There are some cases where you will be able to buy or sell a house for Bitcoin, so exchange it for Bitcoin. But in what we've seen from our members, there are lots of members that are thinking a little bit differently. Instead of exchanging the hard asset, which is Bitcoin, into the house, they prefer to borrow against this Bitcoin instead of selling the
Right.
Bitcoin, because if they exchange their Bitcoin into the house, then guess what? 5 years from now, 10 years from now, they will look at those trades. And I've had those conversations with some of our customers, some of our members. You know, I've had the conversations where people were saying, look, I bought my dream house 8 years ago. I spent whatever that is, 200 BTC on that. And now I'm looking at the BTC price and I really regret that. That was the worst financial decision ever. And those
Yeah,
people now
no,
borrow against
absolutely.
Bitcoin to finance those needs because they don't want to repeat that again. Because, as I said, real estate is not really scarce. I mean, we can always build more. Yeah, you have those edge cases like, Miami front beach property, etc. But other than that, most of the real estate is not that really scarce, and we can always build more, we can always add more, expand the supply. Whereas in Bitcoin, we know it's perfectly scarce. You cannot make more of that, more than 21 million.
Right.
And so because of that the perfect scarcity, I mean, an unlimited number of potential homes we could build, you know, price of homes is crashing in terms of Bitcoin if you denominate in Bitcoin.
Right.
The house that was worth 100 BTC, 5 years ago, now it's worth 12 or 10 or something like that. So it's like 10x lower. And then if you wait 5 years or 10 years, obviously none of this is financial advice, it's just a financial entertainment, but it's just like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what the price of the house will be in Bitcoin. And if you extrapolate, I could say that it is quite likely that it will be below 1 BTC. So,
Yeah.
validating that, exchanging BTC and for houses, so buying houses with BTC or selling houses for BTC, which that direction we saw members doing all as well. Some people just sold their house 5 years ago, exchanged for BTC, and now it appreciated in value a lot. Um, yeah, so these are all great, great valid use cases. And I think on the open door, so they see the demand. They see lots of people having more and more crypto and asking them for it. That's why they are asking when they can roll this out, when they can work on this, because there is actually demand shaping from retail, but also from institutions to actually be able to do a direct exchange. And it's funny because at Zappo, we've been thinking, I mean, we've had this feature forever where you can basically spend your Bitcoin with the debit card. So it's just like as simple as turning on some toggle in the app, and all of a sudden you can start spending the Bitcoin as if it was USD, but basically you spend via debit card, but it takes from your Bitcoin balance. So you can do it too, and we've seen people buying boats or what have you, putting down payments on houses too. Although, as I said, now the perception is shifting because they want to keep the Bitcoin appreciating and they want to borrow against Bitcoin instead of really selling it, because now more people know this trick that actually, or maybe the way that wealthy have been doing this for years, that you basically borrow against your
Right.
appreciating portfolio of assets. I mean, they've been doing this against stocks, against ETFs forever.
Right.
Now it's available against Bitcoin, which is even better collateral than any of those. And all of a sudden you can finance those, whether it's down payment or full payment. I mean, we've seen at Zappo Bank, we've had those like crazy use cases where people are buying yachts or boats or houses or Miami condos and financing this with loans that are backed by Bitcoin. And guess what? They will keep
Yeah.
those loans. They will repay that later, or they will roll them over. But the Bitcoin is still theirs, and it will keep appreciating because that's the hard money. So yeah, I think that's great development to see. The demand is there, but now I can see that more and more market is thinking, like more and more people are thinking about maybe instead of selling, maybe I actually could borrow against that, and wouldn't that be a better idea? And they start calculating, and that opens some interesting thoughts for them.
It sure does. Yeah, I don't want to sell my Bitcoin and cut my upside off at the kneecaps. I'd rather borrow against it. And then, because if you buy your dream home, right, and you spend your Bitcoin, if you just kept it and waited a couple of years, you could have bought multiple dream homes with that same Bitcoin by just borrowing against it. It actually reminds me of one of those real estate shows. It's that guy, Ryan Serhant, who's like in Manhattan. He sells all the big properties there. And there was an episode in the 20 teens where a buyer offered the client about 20, I think it was 20 or 40,000 Bitcoin to buy this like $11 million property. And the owner of the property was like, I don't want the Bitcoin, I don't want it. But I got a feeling he's now regretting that he didn't take the Bitcoin, while the other guy is like, whew, I'm so glad he didn't take my Bitcoin offer, because 20,000 Bitcoin now is worth, math, a lot more than an $11 million condo in Manhattan. So yeah, I think borrowing against it's definitely the way to go. And from your banking perspective, Piotr, what would need to happen behind the scenes in terms of regulation, infrastructure, liquidity to make buying homes with Bitcoin actually work smoothly? I feel like we're still kind of getting the rails in place for something like that.
Yeah, and that's a valid point, because you still need to, after all, in most cases, the buyer, the seller of the home, in most cases, will still want to receive either USD or some form of fiat currency. So it'll need to be auto-converted anyway. But if you have if you have a seller that would accept natively Bitcoin, that's obviously better. But it's not everyone. If you don't have people that are like Bitcoiners, they don't see the value of doing this, then obviously the conversion of some sort would need to take place. So there are hurdles here that you need to do, and that off ramp, And then obviously there is this thing of financing, really, because the Bitcoin, if you, for example, borrowing against Bitcoin and financing a home with it, the problem is you want to have enough time to be able to repay that loan, so that you won't get liquidated, that loan won't be closed, right? And that's why people in general have been asking for longer terms in terms of Bitcoin-backed loans. So they've been asking for 1 year or even extensions of that. So they've been asking for rollovers, for extensions. So for the next year, can I keep the loan for next year, or repay the interest only and then keep it for the next year? And so this is important, because the house, in most cases, is still, even if price in US dollars is, let's say its average house in US is what 400K or something like that. So it's still, even if you're borrowing against Bitcoin to finance that, you still need to have some time to repay that effectively, right? So that's why I think that was one of the hurdles for adoption, especially in this use case. And yeah, when you are buying directly with Bitcoin, so you are sending to someone's address, this is not really recognized still as a sort of like a currency. So in most cases still needs to be like converted into US dollars or fiat currency, right? If you're creating a contract, and there is a seller and the buyer, then obviously, I don't know, maybe in some jurisdictions, I haven't researched the topic, but in most cases, I think it still would need to be sort of auto-converted into fiat or through fiat. So that's one of the hurdles. But as I said, as people now see but as I say, as people now see what's the performance of Bitcoin and what's the performance of real estate, especially if you zoom out and you see that real estate was just a sponge that was like a vacuum cleaner that was just mopping up this excessive liquidity from the system. But it was basically like people were getting excited that, the price of real estate is going 10% per year. It's guaranteed 10%. It just always goes up thing.
Right.
Now people know why. And especially if they've been orange pilled, they see through the system and they know that this is just money supply increase that basically accrues because there's more dollars in circulation, then those dollars accrue and end up in those different assets classes, including real estate. So it's not really the price of your house is going up. It's just value of the dollar is going down, and you're being debased. The fiat is being debased. And then if you compare this to Bitcoin, obviously, then the picture is changes because all of a sudden it's not only not getting more expensive, it's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper every year. So as I said, I expect within 5 years, that's my personal opinion, obviously, but I expect within 5 years, you'll be able to buy a home for less than one Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think you're right too. I mean, 10% used to sound good, but we're almost experiencing, I think it's around 7.5 to 10% inflation here in the United States. They're predicting just this year, and 40% since 2020. So that 10% return not looking too good. And I think there's a much better asset in play that'll get you better returns on your money. And we both know it's Bitcoin, so I agree with you, buddy. All right, we're moving on to the next story. Piotr, hang tight. We'll be back with you in just a second because billionaire investor Paul Tudor Jones says Bitcoin still has massive room to run. Why? Because the U.S. government apparently thinks budget deficit is just a fun word puzzle. Officials project Trump's one big beautiful bill will add $2.1 trillion to the deficit by 2029. And by 2026, America's debt to GDP ratio will hit 127%. And for the first time ever, the U.S. will pay more than $1 trillion a year in interest on that debt. So, yeah, Bitcoin's store of value story just got another season renewal. Tudor Jones says this isn't a bubble, it's a reaction. The Fed's not hiking rates, not shrinking its balance sheet, and not pretending inflation's solved anymore. That's music to the ears of every risk-on investor who knows how to spell hedge. Tudor Jones says this reminds him of the dot-com boom, except this time the Fed isn't hiking to 5.5%. He's calling for a massive rally, potentially more explosive than we saw back in 1999. Bringing Piotr back. Piotr, Paul Tudor Jones says Bitcoin's about to go parabolic. Do you see the same setup here, or is this just another billionaire with a microphone in a long position? What do you think about what Paul had to say?
Yeah, so that's very interesting. So I think obviously he sees the money expansion, the M2, how M2 is increasing. He sees what's happening in the price of gold, right? The gold that is reaching almost $4,000. A crazy
Yeah.
explosion in price. Some people say it's all China buying. Some people say it's other countries, sovereign states. Everybody's buying gold. Everybody is looking for an exit from a fiat debasement and from excessive money printing. And the core problem is obviously and has been for many years already acknowledged, which is, those increasing deficits. What you mentioned, if you have like $1 trillion of interest to service the ever increasing ballooning debt, then at some point it becomes unsustainable. And the sooner you see
Right.
this, the earlier you can act, right? And then how do you act? Well, the answer is simple. You need to scramble. There is scramble for hard assets, for anything that cannot be
Right.
easily produced but can hold the value. And obviously, hard assets, historically, the bearer assets, gold is a king. That's why you see this explosion of the price of gold. But here's what comes to
Right.
Bitcoin. And what many people are interested in this, like, okay, we see the explosion in stocks, we see explosion in gold price. The real estate is also holding up. What we don't see is really this explosion in BTC price just yet and people
Right.
are asking questions, right? Why is that thing? Because they see at the M2 the gold price, etc. And there is this feeling in the market that we have some kind of a lag. So maybe Bitcoin is
Right.
consolidating a bit right now because Bitcoin is always the least predictable. When it shoots up, when it rips, then it rips really hard. And I think
Right.
that's the play. So I think his assessment of the situation is more or less accurate, and that has been a conversation for a long time now, at least for a few months now, because it seems like if you compare where we are today versus where we were like 1 year ago, we're not that much higher, right? Whereas a lots of things
Right.
happens in the meantime, like strategic Bitcoin reserve and pro crypto administration in the US and Genius Act and ETFs and capital inflows and retail adoption and all those stories that we just discussed, right? That's happening. So you feel you get the sense that Bitcoin may be lagging a bit, but I think my personal opinion will catch up, and when that happens, we'll see quite a quite a sudden and brutal move.
Yeah.
What they call the price discovery. So let's see. Those following months will be very, very interesting.
Yeah, it certainly seems like Bitcoin's kind of going on that gradually and then suddenly thesis we've seen a couple of times before. And, that's what people do say is that Bitcoin seemingly lags behind gold by a couple of months. And, this year has been fundamentally very different than all of the years we've seen past. We have all this institutional money. We have, the United States talking about stacking Bitcoin. So to me, it kind of feels like we have this new kind of stronger foundation. So I think Bitcoin going forward is going to act kind of like gold. It's going to be kind of a slow climb up and to the right, but just a little faster than gold because it is a finite amount when, you can mine more gold or one of those meteors fly by and we do the Armageddon thing and then send coal miners out there and get all the gold. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just an entirely different era we're in right now, but I think Q4 is setting up to be pretty fun for all of us orange coiners out there, but we'll see how it plays out. But I'm excited. Now, Tudor Jones in this story, Piotr, blames the U.S.'s fiscal irresponsibility for Bitcoin's next likely big move up. Do you think that debt and deficits are now Bitcoin's best marketing team? Because it's kind of feeling like that.
Yes, and at the very beginning, when Bitcoin was created, when Satoshi Nakamoto created Bitcoin, it was created because it coincided with great financial crisis, right? And especially what happened after some of those, Lehman Brothers and others went bust, and when we basically took the taxpayers' money and we bailed out the whole system with the taxpayers' money, and we increased the money supply as a result, and there was an inflation created in the system, etc. And that was like a protest or like a protection against that, against those bailouts and the central bank intervention. So that was why and when the Bitcoin was created, the circumstances. Now, if you look at the deficits, yes, they are becoming unsustainable. The question is, how many years more that situation could continue, whether this sort of like a big the sort of some kind of a collapse or some kind of a big event is pretty imminent, or is it like a long-term play, like 5 to 10 years out? But I don't think there is a question
Right.
that this is not simply a sustainable long term, because you cannot, that deficit itself is basically the obligation that needs to be repaid at some point in the future. And if you keep rolling over the debt over and over and over, at some point you need to store, there is a due date, right? And at some point you need to repay.
Right.
The problem with the US government and central bank policy is that, as a sovereign nation, you can always print more of your own currency because you own it, right? But the problem with that
Right.
is that you debase everybody else in the process when you're doing this. So I think that's Bitcoin is the answer to that. And because the more the money supply is increased, the more of those dollars will accrue on the value of Bitcoin. And once you figure that out, it really like orange pills you totally, and there is no going back. Because once you start seeing this, then there is no going back. You cannot unsee this, right? Once you see how the system is working.
Right.
And gold historically, so for example, Ray Dalio is saying that we are in he compares our current period to the 1970s decade, and he says that like it was
Right.
also like a very inflationary period, and it was the price of gold was exploding, etc. And he says that we are living through that similar period to those 1970s. And in those cases, there is a scramble for hard assets. You need to look at hard assets. And the hardest asset that we currently know is obviously Bitcoin. Now, obviously, it's not only that, because you still have gold, just relatively scarce and bearer asset.
Yeah.
You have other stuff like prime property, etc. But Bitcoin is in its own league, of course, here. And
Yeah.
yeah, this is the sign of the times. Also, if you look at like asset managers and hedge funds and portfolio managers and their recommendations. At the very beginning was like, do not touch crypto at all. Now we can see, you can sort of put 1% into it. Then they sort of warm up to the idea that maybe 2 to 4% is good. At some point, I don't know, I read somewhere it's like 5 to 10% is all of a sudden not bad
Yeah.
idea. And at some point we'll end up like people will be going, more than that because once you figure out how the inflationary system works, where the constant increase of a money supply and the credit needs to prop up the whole system because otherwise the system will collapse, then you see that this is inevitable. And so Bitcoin is the only off-ramp from that system, is the only exit strategy, is the only, debasement, immune to debasement technology.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Bitcoin certainly has the features of an apex asset. We're seeing that, like to your point. I remember back in the day, a couple of years ago even, you saw financial advisors saying 1 to 2% Bitcoin. Then it came 4 to 5. And then I'm even seeing some that are saying 15 plus. So yeah, it's really fun to see how that's changing as people do the research and see the way that the markets are moving right now and the currency is being debased, and Bitcoin's there to pick up the slack. But not everybody seems totally convinced right now, Piotr, and I'm going to talk about that in our next story, so staying tuned here for a second, because Morgan Stanley's wealth unit is telling their clients that crypto belongs in the speculative corner of the sandbox. Up to 2% for the cautious kids, up to 4% if you like a little speed. They prefer clients get exposure through ETFs and ETPs, not by playing amateur hardware wallet locksmith on a Saturday night. It keeps custody pretty simple, it keeps reporting even cleaner, and it keeps your advisor from pretending they know how seed phrases actually work. They say that crypto is not for people who need steady checks to pay the bills. It's for people who can watch their net worth do parkour and still sleep at night. Reactions are a little mixed here in the peanut gallery. Some love the clarity, while some others say the usual regulation, volatility, long-term risk, etc., are something to, keep in mind. But when a mega bank hands out concrete percentages, advisors everywhere suddenly discover a spine. And the guidance is consistent. Crypto stays a niche slice for now, sized to your stomach, not to your timeline to get that Lambo. Bottom line here from the bank is if you can't tolerate big swings or the possibility of losing the whole slice, don't order from this part of the menu. Meanwhile, industry folks call it huge because Morgan Stanley guides 16,000 advisors and about $2 trillion in assets. Set the dial to 4% and suddenly a lot of dials are going to be moving. All right, we're bringing Piotr back. Piotr, Morgan Stanley says 2 to 4% in crypto. What's your reaction as someone who operates at a Bitcoin first bank? Is that too conservative or is that about right for the average investor? What do you think?
Yeah, so Morgan Stanley is obviously an institution with trillions of under management, and historical wisdom, traditional wisdom was 60-40, right? So 60% in bonds, 40% in stocks. Most portfolios are optimized that way. Then you simply, because they have so a diverse base of customers, and most of those customers have not been really orange pill. They haven't developed a conviction around Bitcoin and haven't developed their investment thesis yet around Bitcoin. That's why they're looking at this Bitcoin thing, which is growing and it seemingly unstoppable, and they think that they need to have a look at this, and maybe they will double a little bit into it. That's why they're saying 2 to 4%. They want to be cautious with that thing because that's like still crypto in their mind, and crypto is risky because of the perception, the way that we have had it in the history where you had a lot of, projects in crypto, coins in crypto created that went bust, disappeared, or were outright scams. That's why the whole crypto industry and Bitcoin is suffering a little bit because of that. But they've seen that, even adding 1% or 2% or 4%, whatever that is, a little bit of Bitcoin, sprinkling a little bit of Bitcoin on that portfolio is actually strengthening that portfolio. and the returns
Right.
are improving because Bitcoin is a wild horse and it's actually generating most of those returns. So on average, that portfolio will outperform the portfolio without the Bitcoin. But what they don't know
Hmm.
is that they don't need to limit themselves to 4%. They can go more than that. But there is a caveat. You need to study Bitcoin. You need to know about the Fourier cycles. You need to know about history. You need to know what problem Bitcoin solves, why it was created, what's the history, and what's the likely path, and why are you holding it?
Right.
Only then they will be able to develop the conviction so that it will enable them to sort of increase those percentages to higher numbers. So yeah, because if you have a portfolio manager or you have any investor without any developed conviction around Bitcoin, they just treat it as a kind of like a novelty. So they plug it like 1%, 2%, just in case, right? But they are
Right.
not ready to stomach the volatility that comes with it because we know that Bitcoin can shoot up, but it can also go down. Maybe not 90%, but it can still go down from the top, whatever that is, 60%, 70%, the drawdown. And it happened in
Right.
the past, it will happen in the future. That's part of the volatility, is the energy of innovation, and that's part of the adoption cycle. So yeah, so I think those percentages right now are pretty conservative. Even with those conservative
Hmm.
percentages, they will still need to rebalance because Bitcoin will be outperforming as time goes by everything else. So they will need to rebalance anyway. But at some point, some of those people will say, look, I only got 1%, 2% of Bitcoin my portfolio. This basically outperformed anything else I held. I need to study this
Yeah.
thing. And the moment they start studying this thing, they will get orange pilled and then they will go more into Bitcoin. So that's my that's sort of how I see it now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Bitcoin is the new hurdle rate, right? And it is unfortunate that we have all these a million other cryptocurrencies and people kind of conflate Bitcoin as being part of that when we know there's Bitcoin and then there's everything else. So, as people do their research, they discover that and then they reap the rewards, as you and I have seen time and again for years now. And I think it's only a matter of time, until everybody's on that train. But as Michael Saylor says, you buy Bitcoin at the price you deserve. So we'll see how it plays out for them. All right, Piotr, always a pleasure for having you on the show today. Before we let you go, though, there's always, I'm sure, plenty of people in our audience that are interested in you and what you and the team at Zappo Bank are doing. What's the best place I can send them to get more info?
Yeah, go straight to the zappobank.com. You can learn about our app, but also the latest products we've launched and some very exciting updates we have coming. So stay tuned.
Amazing. Well, thanks, Piotr, and enjoy the rest of your week, buddy. Can't wait to have you back on the show real soon.
Thanks, Hank.
Cheers. All right, gang, we're taking a quick break here at the Blockchain Report, but when we're back, we're going to do some chart talk with our crypto wunderkind, and we got a special guest joining us today to talk shop, so stay tuned. More Blockchain Report coming your way right after this quick break.
Oh, it's beautiful, Hank. This is not financial advice.
All right, welcome back to the Blockchain Report. We're here for Market Talk with my good man, Luca Pagano, our resident chart shark. Luca, we have seen some very promising developments in the last couple of days. Bitcoin hit new all-time highs at around 126K. We've seen a little bit of a pullback since then, but what are the charts telling you about where we're headed next? Are things setting up pretty well for Q4 as we move in to October here?
Hank, how are you doing? It's amazing to be here. Lovely days on the BTC charts indeed. We've been following up this movement. So very happy that it finally happened. We went to all-time high again this Monday, and yeah, here we are. Pulling back a little bit. I think it'll be some good day, honestly, to analyze charts. If you want to, we can do like a quick recap and see where we're at.
Yeah, let's do it.
Amazing. So basically, yeah, we had this amazing leg up where we scammed a little bit here the shorts. which was beautiful. Shorts got pretty eager here to capitulate, and we couldn't. So that for me was the bull sign, you know. Then we entered back in this range that we mentioned some weeks ago, and we went all the way with no stopping. You know, as I always love to say, Hank, basically, when the market wants to run, it usually doesn't wait for people to enter. It's not like it's gonna wiggle here and then, you know, it just tries to make no pullbacks, and because this is what creates the FOMO, right? And people then start chasing
Right.
the prices, and then, well, we're at an all-time high again. So that's lovely to see, honestly. Now we're at a very interesting level for me, right? Because basically, we went with Borja on the show this Monday, you know, and uh, basically this can be treated either as a deviation, as we had here, right? And we still are on range and we can pull back. But the other thing is, well, we can get shorts eager to short right now again and just reclaim here, right? So for me, you know, as I always love to do, I love to mark out plans. For me, the plan was all-time high. We nailed it. Awesome. Now, what is next? You know, let's say we're not in a position and we wanted to actually. Of course, this is not financial advice, as we always talk, Hank. But for me, there are two interesting levels. Like, if we close the daily above basically $123,000 more or less, for me this is it's still on, and we should. I'm expecting also to run to more or less $135,000. So if that is given, you know, if we can close above 123, for me that's a long. Not financial advice, guys. Remember always. If not, for me the best pullback would be into the midline range, which we had already. Remember, and yeah, it would be any of those would be awesome, honestly.
Yeah. And you know, what was interesting about this last new all-time high, Luca, and it makes me wonder if we're kind of entering that phase of a slow grind up and to the right, is the new Bitcoin all-time high of 126 or whatever it was around there seems like it was kind of unceremonious. People haven't been talking about it. Usually when we've hit all-time highs in the past, you know, it will catch on the news. People everywhere are talking about it, but our all-time high prior to that was only like 125 or high 124s. We went up a little more and then we dropped back down. Do you think that that is in any way indicative of how we're going to see Bitcoin moving going forward? Because we've talked about it with all this institutional money now kind of setting this new bedrock of Bitcoin's base. Are things going to just kind of move a little more slowly like that rather than in the past? We've seen new all-time highs. We'll see a steady jump of, you know, 5K in a day and everybody's going wild. But this was a little bit muted, a little more boring compared to what we see in the past. Do you think there's any truth to my thought here that maybe this is the slow and steady way Bitcoin is going to climb going forward? Or was this us just hitting a new all-time high and then immediately seeing some profits taken off the top?
Yeah, I mean, Hank, that is a great observation, to be honest, because at least my take here, and it can be a little bit contrarian, but my take is, if you don't see a lot of people, you know, a lot of craziness in Twitter, a lot of euphoric moment, you know, that's probably because a lot of people are out of this move. You know, they got scared on the 110s, 100 low 110s, 107, 108, and they started, you know, selling the bottom. And when you see a silent Twitter or you know, X, better said, and you know, nobody posting or whatever, it's probably because of this movement that doesn't let anybody in because there's no pullbacks, you know. And this is probably fuel for a longer leg, you know. That's at least my opinion in terms of the psychology of markets. You know, I always have to talk about psychology of markets, and for me, if people aren't cheering, that's good news for a long leg up, you know. That's at least my view.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is one of those cases where they say, the silence is deafening, and the fact that we haven't seen crypto Twitter exploding with the normal amount of fervor that we've seen in the past is certainly indicative of something, and that's something we'll have a better idea of as time goes on. Now, we got to let you go here. I know you got to head out of here really quick, Luca, but before you do, I know the weekly close before we head into the weekend is always something we're keeping an eye on. So in 30 seconds, what are the levels you're looking at that could indicate the next leg up, or maybe a further pullback as we head into the weekend?
Yeah, amazing, Hank. So for the weekly, honestly, we're looking very good on any weekly above $120,000, which was the previous resistance of the weekly closes. If we can see here real quick, I'm gonna zoom in for you guys. So basically $120,000, that's the highest we've been on a closing weekend. We all obviously crushed it with this amazing week starting October, right? So we should wiggle here a little bit or even close above it, but we shouldn't close below 120 for keeping the structure. And for me, I'm eyeing $135,000. So let's hope to get it, man.
Yeah, that's exciting. And Luca, we always appreciate having you on and sharing your insights and expertise with us. And I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that want more. So let me know and tell them what's the best place to find all of your great chart analysis so they can check out more of it once you're out of here on the show.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to be as active as we can at Roxom. So hope to see you there. And thank you very much for having me, Hank.
Pleasure is always ours, Luca. Thanks, and we'll see you soon, buddy. Enjoy the rest of your week.
Bye.
All right, we're taking a break here, gang, on the Blockchain Report. We'll be right back with more after this break.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
All right, welcome back to the Blockchain Report. Up next is our deep dive with our third special guest of the day. He is someone who's proving that the future of Bitcoin is already here. He graduated high school early. He worked with Strike and Bitcoin Magazine before turning 18 and is already helping build the next generation of Bitcoin adoption. A true Gen Z Bitcoiner leading from the front. Let's give a big Blockchain Report welcome to Kingston McHale, everybody. Kingston, whoa. We are excited to see you, my friend, and so are we. Thank you for joining us today. How are you?
I'm great. Excited to be here. Excited to, talk about the community.
Yeah, we are too, Kingston. And you, man, you are just a wunderkind yourself. You're 18, you graduated high school early, you've already worked for Strike and Bitcoin Magazine. Not really a typical normal teenager's resume here. So really quick, walk us through how this all started. What was your first spark into Bitcoin?
Yeah, I think it goes back to moving. I moved to California right as COVID hit, and that's when I was homeschooled, and being homeschooled, I had a lot more free time, and I started going to Bitcoin meetups in California, getting to know the community there, and then eventually for my 13th birthday, I went to my first Bitcoin conference. Started to learn more about the space in 2021. And then even fast forwarding to today, I've been homeschooled since 5th grade, and I was able to graduate early. I'm still actually 17. So that's definitely been a big help in being able to understand the Bitcoin space and get to know a lot of people, is having that free time.
Yeah, and that's impressive to get into this space at such a young age when we have plenty of CEOs of top companies that still haven't been able to wrap their head around Bitcoin just yet. So one thing I always like to ask about all of our guests here is what was the specific moment or orange pill moment that kind of flipped the switch for you? You said you really got into it during COVID. So was it kind of a aha moment, or was it like many of us out there where it was a slow, inevitable descent into the Bitcoin rabbit hole?
It was a little bit of both, honestly. A lot of it, my dad was always kind of bugging my whole family's ear about it. Oh, Bitcoin. He was in it in 2017. So having that in my ear, I knew Bitcoin existed. I knew it was out there. And then there was an event at one of our meetups in California, where everyone, like, they brought products, some artwork, I think there was a lot of open dimes there. And my dad had hired me to like run one of the booths and like take payments in Bitcoin. And I got to see firsthand that, oh, okay, I have a product, and people were able to come up and buy this product with Bitcoin, with sats. And that kind of showed that, like, oh, Bitcoin is this real money. It actually exists. And then even now, like, number go up, seeing the progression from like just 5 years, and how Bitcoin is still so new, but like people are just now starting to see it. That's definitely the eye-opening thing that happened for me.
Yeah, and as someone who's had the experience of working at Bitcoin conferences since you were, a young teen, what's it been like kind of growing up inside that ecosystem? You're surrounded by maximalists, entrepreneurs, and builders. Like, what's that been like, experiencing that from such a young age?
Nah, it's been great. It's honestly a blessing. Yeah, even like the conferences, I was, meeting everybody, and some people being impressed, some people like Jack Mallard, for example. I met him in 2023, and he sent out a tweet on Twitter and was like, "You have a job waiting for you whenever you're ready." That's when I discovered that, like, you could get a job at 14, which I did not know was legal.
Why did you
And
want to
so
do
I
that?
had
Be young.
it was, yeah. A lot of it was the fact that I was homeschooling. I was done with school 2 hours of my day, and I was like, I'm gonna need money somehow. The world is kind of a scary place right now, honestly, especially in terms of finances. And that's another reason probably Bitcoin. I was kind of turned towards Bitcoin, is that working, like, I got a job at McDonald's, and working there, like, kind of showed me, like, this is what people have to do for a living, and it's like, it's honestly not sustainable. Like, having to do that, like, even like I was 14 doing that. If I did that for 2 years, and like I never want to do that again. I don't know how people do that for so long.
Yeah.
But yeah, going to the conferences and meeting all those people, I was able to learn a lot. And yeah, I was lucky enough to get, Jack was able to give me an internship, and I learned a lot from that. I think the biggest thing for me is taking in a lot of information from a lot of people who have a lot of experience in the space and who are doing a lot of interesting things. Is
Right.
definitely a blessing.
Yeah, and I was really excited to talk to you, Kingston, because on our show, we oftentimes have people in the industry that are a little bit older. Many times they come from TradFi, make their way into the Bitcoin space, but you are a lot different. In fact, you call yourself a Gen Z Bitcoiner. So I'm excited to know from your perspective, like, what does that actually mean to you, and what makes your generation's relationship with Bitcoin different from the ones before it? I want to hear what the youth are talking about in terms of how they're feeling about Bitcoin right now.
I'm going to be 100% honest here. A lot of my friends who I talk to about Bitcoin make fun of me. They don't care about it. It's heartbreaking. There is a lot of kids who I have met who are like into Bitcoin and kind of understand it, which is really nice. But like, yeah, I talked to Bitcoin, a lot of my friends. I gave a presentation at our local meetup, and I like kind of forced my friends to come and like learn about it. And I think, I was talking about this with a couple people as well, is the biggest thing that I think a lot of old, like, a lot of the, millennials or older people have on Gen Zers and the next generation, is that we don't quite understand the current system. And so I think it'll be a lot easier to sell people on the Bitcoin idea. Cause it's like, they don't know either system. They're not, blindly trusting, credit cards and debit cards and how that works. So it's a lot. Instead of having to unteach a whole system and reteach them another system, you can kind of just teach Bitcoin and how that works and kind of sell them on that idea. But yeah, they don't give me the time of day at all. And I think one day they will. I was talking about this with a friend. There's going to be a breaking point where they're going to have to turn to something, kind of like I did. Like, McDonald's was not sustainable. Like, I was so bored. Like, you're gonna at some point you're gonna have to do something to make change, and I think it'll be easier to get Gen Z on board. But definitely, as of right now, my friends coming out of high school, it's I don't think it's the time yet.
Yeah, no, and you make a good point. There's a famous phrase, and it goes something to the effect of, we all choose the type of suffering or the amount of suffering we're willing to endure. And it sounds like your experience working at McDonald's, you're like, I can't endure this type of suffering, so I'm going to bite the bullet, do the research into Bitcoin, which is not really a lot of suffering. People say it's like 40 to 100 hours worth of, researching to kind of wrap your head around what this is, and then you're in this much better place. But with that being said, you've had a very different experience than most young adults, right? Like, you had internships at Strike and Bitcoin Magazine. So how do you think we should be going about communicating how important Bitcoin is to people of your generation? Like, is there a way you think that they could understand it a little bit better, not already being kind of having a TradFi state of mind? Like, how should we be approaching that with the youth today so that they're going to be onboarded onto the system at a lot younger age, which, is only going to benefit them going forward?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's definitely possible. I think one of the biggest things, the most underrated things, is just talking about it, continuing to educate, because at the end of the day, you're never going to be able to force something onto people. If you try and force something onto people, a reaction that you're going to get is they're going to want to do the opposite. So I think staying active, I mean, one of the biggest things is like going to local meetups. Like I have a meetup like 10 minutes away, and there's people there's like 10 new people every time. And they're like, I didn't know this existed. Like, I needed this place to like learn, learn people, find people who are like me. And there are people who are like, I was just wondering about Bitcoin, I wanted to know, like, ask questions about it or learn more or whatever it is. And I think just being there, being a source of, as a Bitcoiner or someone with knowledge of Bitcoin, being in a position to educate people is probably one of the biggest things. Cause at the end of the day, you're not going to be able to force an idea onto somebody. So if you're there to educate on a topic, that's really all you can do. And there's, you could go hard, or you could kind of and force it into them. But yeah, being there to educate people and educating a younger generation, because I mean, ultimately, that's what, as you're growing up, you're being educated, whether that's by a parent, or a teacher, or really whoever it is. You're learning how to live your life. You're being educated on the world, what things mean, how to do certain things. So yeah, especially for the younger generation and Gen Zers, it's you have to be there to educate people.
Yeah, no, it's the classic, you can lead a horse to water, right? But you can't necessarily make them drink. But so the best way is providing this open and inclusive place where people who are interested can learn about it if they want to. And eventually, you said, you get 10 more every time. That snowballs pretty quickly with consistency over time. And you've helped organize the Arizona Bitcoiners community, which is my understanding. So I would love to ask, what's the local Bitcoin scene like out there? And how important, is grassroots organizing in the broader Bitcoin movement right now? What are you seeing?
I think it is the most underrated aspect of Bitcoin, and I think it is super important because, something that not even Bitcoiners, that we as humans kind of lost during COVID is, the eye contact conversation, the in-person handshaking people and meeting people. And it's a little bit disheartening. I'll be with my friends and they'll come up to me. Also, complete random. Everyone makes fun. A lot of people make fun of me. They're like, oh, you're homeschooled, you're not going to have social skills or whatever. That's one of the biggest things I get. And it's funny how my friends will like ask me, oh, we order food for me. We order this for me. I don't want to talk to people, or whatever it may be. And so, yeah, a lot of people are like scared to talk to people and like scared to, talk to somebody they don't know, which is a little bit sad. And I think that's where meetups come in terms of with Bitcoiners, because it's a place where you meet in person with real human beings and you talk about something you have in common. We have presentations here that people love learning. So the presentations attract a lot of people and attract a lot of questions, and they make for a lot of good conversation. So yeah, meetups all around are a big help in bringing a community together.
Yeah, absolutely. We're kind of growing up, or your generation is growing up in this area of a lot of keyboard warriors out there that are hiding behind the screens, and you don't make those interpersonal connections. And it's hard to trust people when you're separated by a screen for a lot of reasons, all the scams and stuff out there. So there's really no replacement for that person-to-person contact. So it begs my next question, Kingston. When you're looking at the Bitcoin industry today, from the conferences to the companies, what's the one thing you think the community is getting right now about spreading the gospel of Bitcoin? And what's one thing you think that we're getting wrong right now that maybe we could be doing better?
I mean, honestly, I don't think there is a right or wrong. I think the conferences are great. Again, like I just talked about, it gets a lot of people together. And honestly, having, being at the conference, seeing the expo hall, there's a lot of people experimenting, because I don't want to call Bitcoin an experiment, but to a certain level, it is this new idea that a lot of people are getting on board with, and it is kind of a solution for our current money system, because no money system is going to be perfect, I think, but it is definitely yeah. I mean, I out of fear of having a better word, I think it's just it's kind of an experiment. We're all kind of going along. We don't really know what the next day is going to bring, and so seeing a lot of companies, with these new ideas and these new ways to utilize Bitcoin is definitely is definitely nice. It's definitely something that is, I guess, not right or wrong, because it's we're kind of all kind of winging it a little bit. But yeah, being able to go to the conferences, see a lot of people, see what a lot of people are inventing, what people are doing, and learning what this is, what that is great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a good way to put it. As like any tech out there, you're going to see some winners, the things that work, and then some losers. It makes me think of like video game consoles. Like some worked really well, the PS2 when it came out, and then there were things like Virtual Boy that didn't really work out so well. So there is an experimentation element to it, as in anything that's new. And something that's a little unique, I think, to the Bitcoin and kind of crypto space is all of the attention it gets on the social medias, specifically on X, which I know you're pretty active in. I know you've posted some thoughtful things about your own education and Bitcoin adoption. So as a Gen Zer, do you think that social media right now is helping Bitcoin's message, or maybe is it hurting it a little bit because there's like outlandish price predictions and people hawking to a coin and stuff? Do you think social media is a net positive for Bitcoin, or is it maybe a net negative because it just throws a lot of misinformation out there?
Yeah, I mean, social media is definitely something I've had to learn to ration myself with. I delete a lot of socials, and I'm active on X here and there, but it's definitely something very hard to be active on. But I think in general, social media is going to be it is helping, because no one is waking up, going to their driveway and grabbing a newspaper anymore to learn what's happening in the world. Everyone's news source is social media, so at a certain point, you're going to have to accept that social media is the new news source. You're looking at Fox, and then whatever the news source is, like what are they posting, or even like third party news sources. Oh, this just in. So yeah, I think social media, whether it helps or not, you're going to have to accept that it's there and it's the news source that people are using. So yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon, for better or worse. And, Kingston, you mentioned you're kind of the Bitcoiner guy of your friends. And I think today we're at an interesting inflection point in Bitcoin's journey where a lot of people consider Bitcoin part of crypto, when it's becoming very clear to a lot of us that they're kind of two different things. There's Bitcoin and then there's everything else. When you're talking to your friends about it, how do you go about explaining the differences to them and why Bitcoin is inherently different than all of the other stuff that's out there currently?
I mean, this may be an unpopular opinion, but honestly, it's easier at the start to just kind of, Bitcoin is an online currency, whatever. But yeah, it is different. And eventually, getting into the fact that, you're not going to be able to take a meme coin or whatever and buy milk at the store eventually. So I think it comes in layers. So, eventually that idea will click for them. But I think right now, it's, hey, this is this new money solution, and I think this is the future. And honestly, a way I go about educating them is I kind of again, with the forcing thing, I kind of just tell them, hey, look at this wallet. Here's a Bitcoin wallet. Download it. And I sent him 1,000 sats or whatever. That's kind of a lot now. It was a couple years ago when 1,000 sats was like pennies. And it's funny because my friend would text me, "Oh, my Bitcoin is it's down today." And I'm like, "Dude, I sent you 1,000 sats. You have pennies. Like that's nothing." So it's like, yeah, no, it's like, what's it called? You know, it basically it shows them the point. I do that is I show them, hey, this is how it works, and you kind of you teach them, and you're there to kind of guide them, and then they're there, they have it, they can see it in their account, they see it exists, because that's another thing. A lot of people are like, oh, well, I don't have it, so it doesn't exist. And, so I make them, they have it, they have their wallet, they see it exists, and they do what they will with that information.
Yeah, it's always, people are always going to be a lot more interested when you give them a little skin in the game and then you're providing them more of a hands-on experience. It's a lot easier to kind of wrap your head around how to use Bitcoin, what it's used for when you do have that firsthand experience. But you've also been in a really unique position where, you've been at Bitcoin conferences since you were quite young. So my question to you is, how does it feel now being on the other side? You said at the Bitcoin conference when you were like 13, you're 17 now. How much of that has changed, and what changes have you noticed during that 4-year span? How far have we progressed in just 4 years?
I mean, the obvious answer is the price. The price has definitely gone up in that 4-year time. But yeah, going the community in general, the community as well. There's a lot more people who maybe aren't fully orange pilled, fully understand Bitcoin, but there's a lot of people who are kind of at that point. They're at that breaking point where it's like, well, we need another solution. And, they see a lot of people talking about Bitcoin. They see what a lot of companies and people are saying and doing in the space, and they kind of turn towards it. I think that's another reason why a lot of people are going to meetups, a lot of people are going to conferences, is because people are looking for a solution now. And I think that, that's one of the biggest differences, because before, I say before, only a couple years ago was it was thousands of people, but a relatively small group of people in the grand scheme of things. But now everybody you ask kind of knows Bitcoin exists, or know the word at least. But it's still kind of the crossing over to fully understanding Bitcoin and whether they like it or not.
Right, and this is a question I just thought of. So one of my kind of theories about Bitcoin adoption is that we now have this much younger generation like yourself. You're right in the main ballpark of it, that has grown up with Bitcoin always being a thing. Right? I grew up and Bitcoin wasn't a thing till, 16, 17 years ago. So it took a lot more time for a lot of us the older guard out there to kind of wrap our heads around this fundamentally new part of the financial system. But for you and your friends, Bitcoin's always been around in some regard. You've probably had a lot more exposure than most. But my question is, your friends though, do you feel like even though some of them tease you for it, do you feel like the overall sentiment in terms of how willing they are to at least listen about Bitcoin is different than maybe the older guard out there that's been kind of being it's a scam, it's a Ponzi for years? Do you feel like your generation is more receptive to Bitcoin as part of the new financial world order as we head into the future?
Oh, 100%. It goes back to even before Bitcoin exists, or even people growing up, is I could not, I could a little bit kind of explain to you our current money system, but not in the depth of how I know Bitcoin and how I understand Bitcoin. And, because a lot of people just grew up and we're told, hey, this is the way it is. There's no changing it. And same thing for me. I have, I have a bank account, I have a credit debit card. I'm kind of forced into the system, and I know relatively how it works, but not, I don't know the ins and outs of it. Whereas Bitcoin is, it's this new thing, and it's you're comparing, the current system with kind of, a newer system. And so you're kind of you're learning both a little bit. So it's a lot easier to, weigh two things when you already, when you don't know either, than knowing one very well and having to kind of switch a whole system. because a lot of people also, kind of don't, some people don't like change. So, they hear, oh, I got to go through all this work. Oh, I got to download like 4 new apps or whatever they think, Bitcoin might be. And yeah, they're a lot less receptive to it. Whereas, if you're just learning about, banking or, the money system, it's a lot easier to, hold on to both ideas, if you will.
Right. Yeah, because you have all these people that have grown up in traditional financial systems that are just entrenched in that. That's what I know. I'm not interested in changing it, even if it's a good thing, because people just don't, especially as you get older, you don't want to learn new things the same way that you did when you're younger. And your brain doesn't process new information quite the same way. That's what they always say. If you want to learn a new language, do it while you're young, because your brain is a sponge and you can just accept new ideas a lot better than, someone who's been older and talking about the same thing for 20 years. And
Exactly.
You're in a really unique position as such a young Bitcoiner, because there's so much talk about creating better educational pipelines for young Bitcoiners like yourself. Have you considered ever maybe working on something like that? Because you're right in the thick of it. You have your friends who know of Bitcoin. Maybe they're not into it yet. Like, are there any plans in your future where you think you might work on something like that to create educational programs for people of your age, potentially? Because you're at a really unique seat at the Bitcoin table right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely an option. I think we'll definitely see, kind of what happens. If people don't, naturally listen to other things and they want, if a problem kind of presents itself and, I realize that I can help be a solution and provide the education that, some people want or need. I would definitely be open to it. But I think, again, like I said before, still in that stage of, some people that I know, they don't have jobs. So it's like still kind of, they're slowly moving into having to get a job and, pay taxes and have to kind of learn about the inner workings of the world. So yeah, maybe later down the line, if a problem presents itself, I definitely help, educate people.
Yeah, if only we could have everyone experience that crummy first job that they could realize, like, there's got to be a better way. I cannot make this my life. It reminds me of one of my buddies. His first job in high school is he worked at a Quiznos for like 2 weeks. And he was like, I can't do this. I need to get my life on track. I can't work at Quiznos. And now he's doing very well for himself. So if only we could figure out a way to do that without people actually having to experience it. And Kingston, when you're talking to your friends or people around your general age, what is kind of like the one message that you would send to them, or like every high school or college student in America, about Bitcoin? Like, what would you tell them so that they hopefully could get started on their own journey into the space? Because we both know it'll be good for them in the long run.
I mean, I think it goes back to just educating yourself. I mean, because realistically, you're not going to be able to do anything with it, do anything with like the information that Bitcoin exists if you don't know what you're doing. Right. So educating yourself and then eventually just trying it. And maybe you get it first try. Maybe you're like, maybe it clicks for you like that, and maybe it takes some time for it to click for you. I think one of the biggest things, whether there's something immediate that I can show them, like downloading a wallet. Here, try it. Here, download this wallet. I'll send you. This is how easy it is. Or it takes time, and people have to discover downloading a wallet for themselves. I think it really depends, but definitely, educate yourself. Watch like 4 YouTube videos. Here, I'll send you a couple. And then to try it out for yourself, like learn for yourself.
Yeah, no, and we're glad we got someone like you spreading the gospel to so many others at a young age, because that's the best way for people to get into it. Pique their interest, let them decide if they want to do the due diligence themselves, and then you've kind of done all you can, and they'll benefit if they do, and they'll stay in the same place if they don't. Not your problem at that point. All right, Kingston, so what we're going to do now is we're going to play a fun little game on our show we do with all of our guests. So, as I'm sure you're well aware, this has been a very unique and exciting year for Bitcoin. We've reached new all-time highs a couple of times in just the last few weeks here. But as we enter Q4, people are predicting some pretty crazy numbers as to where they think Bitcoin is headed and what technically would be at the end of this cycle, if you still believe in the whole cycle theory, but that's a different debate for another time. So what we're gonna do is, let's go to camera 3, guys, and we're gonna bring up our leaderboard here for you, Kingston. So what we have here on the side are some of our favorite guests and their price predictions for Bitcoin on December 31st. At the end of this year, 2025, the clock strikes 12. This is what they think the Bitcoin price will be. And the game is, I want you to give me your guess. And the winner of this contest, we're going to send a Roxom Patagonia to at the end of this year. So you can see on the board here some of the guesses we have. Knut Svanholm says 443,000. And like I always say, if he's right, I'm going to pick you up in my Lamborghini, buddy, because we're going to have a good time with that. But then there's a lot more in the conservative end. I'm at about 142 or so. So if you had to guess for fun and games, what price do you think Bitcoin will be by the end of this year, and why do you think it'll be there?
I mean, it's very difficult because, there's like a lot of numbers. I mean, I have to go. I think I have to go 221,000. I mean, very bullish.
Ooh, I like it.
Very bullish, but a great. I mean, my dad made a song like one of the years, a couple years ago, 25K on Christmas Day, and we ended up hitting it. So I mean, 21 is like Bitcoin's lucky number. So I think if there is a number, it's got to be 221K.
221K. All right, we're going to put you on the leaderboard. Very cool. So you think it's kind of a mix of, what would I call it? Like Bitcoin magic and that 21 number, and then what else? You think this institutional adoption can't be ignored? You think Q4 is usually very kind to Bitcoin, kind of a mixture of those factors is going to bring us to that number this year?
Nah, I mean, a little bit of everything. Of course, 21, being, what a lot of people think Bitcoin's lucky number, but yeah, a lot more people flocking to it, and, kind of want to dip their beak into it and, buy their first couple sats, buy maybe, if you're really rich, buy Bitcoin.
Right.
Yeah, I think, there's going to be a lot of people towards the end of the year, I hope.
Yeah, no, I think so too. And we're going to head back to camera 1 here, guys. So Kingston, our time here is running a little short, but you're super active in the community, and I'm sure there's plenty of other young up and coming Bitcoiners like yourself out there that are drawing a lot of inspiration from everything you're doing. So with that being said, if they wanted to learn more about your meetups, your thoughts in the Bitcoin space, are there any places on the good old interwebs that I can send them to get more info on you and all of the great stuff you're up to?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm gonna try and stay as active as I can on X. Like I said, social media, I definitely need to kind of ration social media for myself because it can get pretty dark. But even the conferences, I'm at every flagship event in the US, every conference. So yeah, if you see me there, like, don't be afraid, ask a couple questions, start up a conversation. I love talking to people and learning from people as well.
Yeah, amazing, Kingston. Well, I got to say, man, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really exciting to see, the next generation of Bitcoiners out there leading the way in adoption for your generation. And it's, really happy to have people like you on board that are fighting the good fight, spreading the gospel, and we're really excited to see everything you're going to be doing in the Bitcoin space, my friend, and hopefully we'll see you at one of the next big Bitcoin meetups.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Hank. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was a pleasure, Kingston. We'll see you next time, buddy. Thanks for stopping in. And we here at the Blockchain Report are going to take a quick break, but we'll be back right after this.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Do you wish you could grab cash without selling your Bitcoin? Yeah, same. But that's why Ledn exists. They're the global leader in Bitcoin-backed loans. Over $9 billion issued since 2018 with a perfect record protecting client assets. Now, what makes a Ledn loan different? Well, with custodied loans, your collateral stays put. They don't go degen and lend it out for yield. There's no credit checks. It funds in under 6 hours, no monthly payments. You can repay anytime with 0 penalties. And for transparency, grown-ups out there, proof of reserve reports, you get those every 6 months, verified by a top accounting firm. Bottom line, Ledn lets Bitcoin holders unlock liquidity without selling. You can check it out at ledn.io/RoxomTV. That's ledn.io/RoxomTV. All right, it's time for more bull run. Let's get into it, gang. Strategy now has a Bitcoin stash worth nearly $80 billion. It's catching up to the corporate cash hoards of Amazon, Google, and Microsoft. At Bitcoin's record high of 126K, Strategy's 640,000 BTC briefly topped $80 billion in value, putting it within shouting distance of Amazon and Google's treasuries, both valued at around $97 to $95 billion. That means Michael Saylor's balance sheet now rivals Silicon Valley's war chests, except he is made out of memes and mathematics. JP Morgan analysts call Bitcoin a debasement trade, meaning investors are buying it to escape the dollar's slow motion implosion. At last check, Strategy's average purchase price, about $74,000 per Bitcoin. The current value up 65% for a gain of roughly $30 billion. That's not a treasury, that is a monument to conviction. Meanwhile, Microsoft and Meta are busy explaining to shareholders why they said no to Bitcoin. Spoiler alert, it's because of volatility. Yeah, volatility. As in volatile enough to outperform every other asset on Earth. In a year where inflation's eating savings and debt's eating nations, Bitcoin isn't the risky asset anymore. It's the only one still obeying math. And Strategy's $78 billion treasury is proving it. When a single company's Bitcoin stack starts catching up to Amazon's cash pile, it's no longer a sideshow, it's the main event. And SpaceX, the company that builds rockets to Mars, apparently decided the moon wasn't far enough because it now holds over $1 billion in Bitcoin. According to data shared by Arkham, Elon Musk's space toy currently sits at 8,285 BTC, officially joining the Bitcoin $1 billion club. The data shows that SpaceX bought the coins way back in 2021 and has been holding ever since. 4 years of volatility, bear markets, Twitter meltdowns, and it's still diamond handing their BTC. And this isn't SpaceX's first rodeo at the $1 billion mark. In early 2021, the firm disclosed 28,000 Bitcoin, worth about $1.8 billion at the time, before cashing out around 70% of it in mid-2022 when the crypto markets were doing their best impression of a dumpster fire. Since then, SpaceX is chilled at its current 8,200 Bitcoin, not buying, not selling. Basically, they're just that guy at the party who found the perfect spot on the couch and refuses to move. That's me. Now, in July of 2025, the SpaceX wallet moved 1,300 Bitcoin, worth roughly $153 million, to a new address, its first on-chain activity since 2022. Cue the panic? Not quite. Sources close to the company say it wasn't selling, it was just restructuring storage wallets. Or in other words, SpaceX tidied up its Bitcoin closet. Meanwhile, their sister company Tesla is sitting at about 1,500 BTC, worth about $1.37 billion, proving the Musk family of companies officially hold more digital gold than actual gold. There he is. Since 2022, SpaceX has maintained that the same 8,285 BTC through every macro panic, political circus, and ETF rumor. So what's the big takeaway here? Institutional adoption isn't coming. It's already orbiting Earth in a reusable rocket. And when a company that literally sends payloads into space decides to hold Bitcoin for 4 years straight, that's not a speculative bet. That's a gravitational shift. If Bitcoin really is digital gold, then SpaceX is Fort Knox with boosters attached. All right, gang, it's time for some tales from Hodlwood. Let's roll the stinger and see what's going on. All right, let's see how things are going on in Hollyweird. Well, it looks like Taylor Swift's new album, The Life of a Showgirl, dropped and immediately broke the internet, shattered every streaming record, and made more money in 24 hours than most pop stars will see in a lifetime. Her companion film even topped the box office, pulling in $33 million and beating out Leonardo DiCaprio and The Rock. So yeah, financially, Taylor's doing fine. Emotionally, maybe not so much. Critics have been divided about this new era. Let's just say half of the internet's screaming masterpiece, while the other half's wondering if they accidentally clicked a parody playlist. But the real tension isn't about the music, it's about what comes next. Taylor's in her transitional era. She's conquered the world, become a billionaire, and gotten engaged, which means, for once, she's run out of enemies. And that's a dangerous place for an artist who writes her best material out of revenge. If she wants to keep evolving, she might need to slow it down and remember that even showgirls need a rehearsal. Because right now, it's less life of a showgirl and more attack of the content algorithm. And as Bitcoiners know, when something gets too big, too fast, and too centralized, there's usually a correction on the way. We're taking a quick break, but when we're back, it's time for Bullish, Bearish, or BS, where we break down today's top stories and see how they are shaping up for our beloved Bitcoin going forward. Stay tuned. All right, it's time for Bullish, Bearish, or BS. This is the part of the show where we wrap up today's top stories and decide if they're looking good, bad, or otherwise for Bitcoin. Let's get started. Open Doors CEO says the company will let users buy and sell homes with Bitcoin once they prioritize it, which is corporate speak for we'll do it right after lunch or maybe next quarter. My verdict on this, I'm calling bullish. I mean, real estate is one of the last industries still pretending not to understand crypto. And if home buyers start happening into Bitcoin, that's a massive psychological and financial milestone, one that pushes BTC further into the real world economy. So Bitcoin for houses, I'm calling bullish and probably IRS approved chaos. So great start. Next up, Morgan Stanley is now telling its $2 trillion in clients to keep 2 to 4% of their portfolios in crypto. So congratulations, the same people who called it tulip mania now think it's at least a small flower bed worth planting. Calling bullish on that one. I mean, even a 4% allocation from institutions that size means billions in potential inflows. And the moment Wall Street starts officially blessing Bitcoin, you can bet everyone else follows, because nobody wants to be the only one missing the boat when it's headed to 150K. So big banks buying the dip, definitely bullish on my watch. Great start. 2 bullish, 0 bearish, 0 BS. One more to go. Last but not least, we got Taylor Swift's life of a showgirl broke every record known to man, streaming, box office, emotional damage, and divided the internet faster than an ETH hard fork. I'm calling BS on this, right? Nothing really to do with Bitcoin, but like the crypto market, it's overhyped, polarizing, and fueled entirely by emotion. At least Bitcoin doesn't need a breakup to pump. Showgirl, total BS, though the merch is probably tokenized by next week anyway. So our final score today, we got 2 bullish, 1 BS, no bearish, which means today's market signal, we're feeling bullish, baby. Institutional money is inching closer, real world adoption is expanding, and the only BS left is coming from the music industry. Bitcoin's holding strong and momentum is definitely building, and the next leg up is starting to look less like a maybe and more like a when. Well, gang, that is it for today's show. As always, thanks for joining us on the Blockchain Report. If you haven't already, please do me a belated birthday favor and be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to RoxomTV, Hank at RoxomTV, and the Blockchain Report on all platforms that you choose to doom scroll on. And we will see you tomorrow for more crypto chaos and blockchain bedlam right here on RoxomTV. Until then, stay safe, stay informed, and as always, make sure to hodl on. See you tomorrow.